Today you see a really cool layering piece. It's a type of cape with a hood. I think fitting is not something you need to stress about here. It would be something that you could make for someone else easily. I made mine out of wool and I'm so happy with it. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I have a cape pattern for you today. It's different to other cape patterns I've seen. I've made one before that was completely different. This one is really simple, it's very classic, it could be very, very stylish, and it can be something that you could wear in a formal setting or even for lounging. It just depends on your fabric choice. This is called Koersel cape and it's brand new from Itch to Stitch. This is an oversized fit. It's got a really lovely hood. It's got an open front, no buttons, no zipper. You just put it on and wear it just like it is. There's no sleeve piece. The shoulders are quite wide, it's like a drop shoulder style. It'll reach a little above the elbow. You would need to wear something underneath, of course, if you want it for cold weather, but it's just so nice to put on and have your arms free. Rounded edges along the front and the back, nice features. And then on the front pieces, you can put pockets, two styles, welt pockets or patch pockets. These patch pockets are lined and they're bound around the edges, really cool. And what closes it up on the side is a partial side seam over here that you do with the fabric wrong sides together. You can make it longer if you want to. There are shorten and lengthen lines there, but it's going to reach the mid-thigh. It's definitely going to cover your bottom. Because the Koersel cape is a brand new pattern at Itch to Stitch, it'll be 20% off during the first week. That goes through next Wednesday, the 11th of December. At the top of the comment section, pinned, you'll always find my affiliate link if you want to use it. If you click on that link, it'll take you directly to the website. If you end up purchasing, I do receive a small commission back from the designer and it doesn't cost you anything extra. It's just one way that you can support the work that I do here on YouTube, creating really helpful sewing content that you can enjoy for free. One of the ways I make an income doing this. So if you do use my link, I'm always super grateful. Thank you so much.
For fabric, there's quite a nice variety here. I would recommend medium to heavyweight fabrics, and they could be either a woven or a stable knit. I think those would work perfectly. I had a hard choice choosing the fabric I wanted. I knew I wanted some type of wool.
A little while ago, I showed you all my wool collection. I just pulled it out of the top of my cupboard. And one of the goals was to actually choose a fabric for this because I was already planning to make this pattern and I wanted to just see them all, touch them, remember them. They're not the type of fabric I use all the time. So I finally settled on one. And what was important for me was that it was the same on the right and the wrong side, or very similar, because you would be able to see the inside of the hood. This is not a lined pattern, so I think you should like the wrong side of your fabric. Also, I wanted it to be wool because it's just nice. I wanted something soft. This is an unlined pattern, so I didn't want to feel the need to line it because it was itchy or something like that. So all those things made me choose what I chose, which is a wool blend material. You can also use a wool flannel if you wanted. Any type of wool material would be amazing.
It would be my first choice for a garment like this.
But then you can use other things like velvet, double knits, a ponte. Even I know some people made this more of like a bathrobe situation, loungy, a type of minky stretch velvet situation. You can go that route as well. Anything that's flannel backed, a really heavy sweater knit would be amazing, or a sweatshirt material that's nice and stable and heavy. So many options. You can make it look however you want it to look. But I always knew that I wanted mine to be a little dressier. That's why I went with my wool material and it's amazing. It's got checks, gorgeous. Now you will need a small amount of bias tape that you can make yourself or buy to bind the patch pockets if you want to use that option. If you're doing the welt pockets, then you don't really need any bias tape. In the original instructions, you have all the edges serged and just folded in and top stitched. But because I chose a wool that was quite a huge weave, sort of loosely woven, fraying like no tomorrow, I decided to bind everything. So I made so much yardage of my own bias tape. If you do want to consider my choice here and replicate, I would suggest you make bias tape out of a soft, pliable material like rayon. Otherwise, it would just stiffen all the areas and just make it really hard to work with, bulky. So I would definitely not use store-bought cotton, cardboardish type bias tape here. I think it would ruin the whole look and the whole feel of the cape. I would definitely make my own, sharing what I would do and what I wouldn't. Of course, at the end of the day, you can make your own choice. And you can just serge and fold in. I would have done that if I'd chosen another fabric. But sometimes when you finish edges, you do have to think about the fabric choice, and it's not going to be the same for everything. You need a small amount of interfacing fusible for the top of the patch pocket, and if you're doing the welt pocket, of course, you're going to need some interfacing to fuse that whole area there. I chose to do the patch pockets because, again, welt pockets need a lot of precision cutting into corners. And to do those techniques, I would want a fabric that's densely woven, a little bit more stable than the fabric that I chose. So I went with the patch pockets there. For the lining of these pockets, I also used a small piece of rayon, the same type of fabric I used to make my bias tape. Sizing for the Koersel cape is a little bit different to other itch-to-stitch patterns. XXS to 3XL. That is the sizing. It goes up to a 60-inch hip. Now, the only measurement you need from your body to make this cape is your full hip. I'll show you the chart right here. I fit into a size medium with my 43-inch hips. The ease around the hip area is about 9 to 10 inches, so it's quite nicely oversized. That's why I'm saying if you wanted to make this for someone in your family or something like that, I think it would be easy for you to guesstimate the size and not make a mistake here. Sewing something like this would be super nice because you don't have to worry about shoulder fit and bust and all that stuff, you know, you can just make it and it'll fit. It'll be perfect because it's just part of the style to be oversized for a garment like this. So this is something I'd love to make for my mum. It would be perfect for her layering in the house, outside in the winter. So that is something I'm going to really consider for her Christmas gift. I'd rather prefer her choose the fabric and be a little bit more involved in the project. The full length from here down to the bottom is around 31.5 inches or 80 centimeters. That is going to cover most people's bottoms. At least it covers mine, and I'm 5'8". If you wanted it shorter or longer, there's shorten and lengthen lines in the front and the back pieces that you could use if you wanted. I just made the original length and I'm happy with it. I wouldn't have wanted it shorter or longer. But again, that's something that you can modify easily. Personal fitting, no personal fitting, just size M. Print out the pattern, cut it, sew it, and be happy. Very painless. Look at this. I did show you this fabric in my wool collection video and it was always one of my favorites and it's so amazing. I love the checks, black, red, just amazing. It's super soft and it looks the same on both sides. So, you know, the inside of the hood would be visible. Everything is bound in the inside. Shoulder seams are bound, pressed open. All the edges of the hood are bound. These edges are the ones that you would have just serged and pressed in and top stitched all the way around. And then the front is just open. It's got a rounded edge. I cut my pockets on the bias like this and I bound all around. It's part of the instructions. Inside the pocket is lined. You can see when I show you the sewing segment, you'll see the special things I did to this pocket to make it really stable because it's cut on the bias. The reason I cut it on the bias is just because it looks pretty. That is the only reason. I think it just stands out and you can see it, and anything on the bias against, you know, the checks is going to be striking. So that's what I chose. Here is the side seam. There's a little mark right here and right there that you sew, and then you get this situation here. Fabric is wrong sides together there. And then I made sure to match up all the checks. I had to cut everything in a single layer. It took quite a while to match. I even matched up the seam of the hood over here on the back. You can see everything matches there. You know, even though it's relatively simple, it did take me the whole day to sew just because it took so long to do the binding. But again, that's something extra that I wanted to do. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. Let's see it on, styled a couple of ways. This is my Koersel cape from Itch to Stitch. This is a really cool layering piece with really easy fitting. I've sewn a size medium. I have a wool blend, super nice soft drapey fabric that doesn't need to be lined to be comfortable. Very beautiful checks in my favorite colors with the black background. You'll see up closer, there's red and white in there. So lovely with the hood. You can see that there's no sleeves here. It's just like a dropped shoulder style, open on the front, no closure, rounded edges everywhere. So gorgeous. I chose patch pockets. You can also do welt pockets, and I cut those on the bias. I decided to finish all the edges with bias binding just because it was a better option for this type of fabric, although you can just serge the edges and fold them all in. There is a partial side seam there that closes it up on the side, and then all the rest going up would be your sleeve opening. Super beautiful. There's a closer look at my patch pockets. Love them cut on the bias, super pretty. These are lined pockets and they're wrapped all the way around with the binding. There's the join of the hood with a neckline, also finished with binding. I don't have any edges inside that are not bound just because it was better for this wool fabric. Took a bit of time to do, but so worth it, so beautiful, and I love these colors. I have a really basic fitted knit dress underneath, and I did it because it matches, also because I want to highlight the cape. Love the hood on, it's very comfortable, very nice, cozy. I'm really going to enjoy wearing this in autumn and winter. When it gets to that, I'm in full-on summer right now, and that's why I've worn a short sleeve dress underneath, which does not make much sense, but I will style it more winterish for you to see also. Absolutely love how this turned out. It's really easy fit, would be an amazing gift you can sew for someone else where you wouldn't really have to worry about fitting that much, and they would love it. Here is my cape again, basic styling as well with some flare jeans, this time a top with actual long sleeve, which would be more realistic for cooler weather. I love that this cape is so stunning that I can wear basic things underneath. You don't really need to think much about what you're wearing under it and just let the cape shine. It's gorgeous. Love the red bag here, and the color combination here is everything for me. Let's keep it black, but different now with a pleated skirt that's just below the knee, some lovely boots, and this time I've brought a fitted sweater that's also from Inch to Stitch called Venado. I've tucked it in just so that you can see where my waist is, just because the skirt is wide and the cape is also wide. I want to just bring some balance to my shape under there. Lovely. Love that little short collar. The black and the red contrast go perfectly with the colors here in this check. So yeah, this is a nice winter outfit for me when I'm gonna go to church next year in the winter. Gorgeous. Another cool outfit with a long pencil skirt in a knit, lovely slit there. You can see my boots. I've kept the same Venado top tucked in just to bring some shape into the outfit underneath the cape because it's wider. Absolutely love how this looks. I cannot wait for the weather to cool down so I can wear my cape. It's just amazing. And here's something casual with not black. This time just your basic blue denim, some loafers, kept the Venado top underneath. I think this is a really cool outfit. Nice and casual to go out shopping with, or something just more relaxed, not so formal-ish like the other looks I put together. I love how the denim looks with the check. Denim you can't do wrong. I've changed the order of events a little bit, wanted you to see it, all the details that I did, see it on, and now we can see how to sew it. I did focus a lot on the extra little things that I did differently because of my fabric choice, like why I interface the pockets, how I interface them to get rid of the bias effect of the fabric. I do not want to have pockets that look beautiful because they're on the bias, but they're unstable and would end up sagging later on. You can eliminate that bias if you want to with another way of using the interfacing. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you all the pattern pieces, how I bound everything together, how to put it together. It's a very fun sew, and I'm really happy to share how mine came to be. Let's see. For this cape, I've chosen to do the patch pockets because it's just going to be better for this fabric choice. Now I have this wool blend fabric. You can see how big these fibers are, how easy this frays. It's loosely woven-ish. It's not a fabric I would want to do little tiny cuts that are required for the welt pockets. Even if I did stabilize an interface, I would be cautious later on that I would still get holes. I don't want to be doing those little cuts for a welt pocket. So I'm going to be doing patch pockets. Now on the instructions, it has you just interfacing this top part of the pocket, and I would do that if I was cutting my pocket on the straight of grain, but I want to cut it on the bias. There's my fabric. I want it on the bias just because it's going to look pretty. So I'm going to interface the whole pocket piece, not just the top, and I'm going to interface it with the fabric on the bias to sort of get rid of the bias in the fabric. I think bias looks pretty, but it has the potential of stretching out and deforming over time. I want to get rid of that with my interfacing. So I've cut my interfacing on the straight of grain, as you can see there. This is my fabric. I've drawn a line here that's going to be the bias, 45 degrees from the grain line. And that's how I'm going to cut my fabric. I'm going to put my bias line along one of these lines right here, and that's how I'm going to cut it. And this is also how I'm going to interface, like that. The interface is on a straight of grain, as is my pattern piece, and I'm going to fuse it right there. And that's going to stabilize my bias cut piece, but it won't stretch like a bias piece would. So that's how I'm going to interface. I'm just going to put that right on there, interface, and then do the same on the other side. I'm going to cut them one by one because I want them to turn out looking exactly like one another, so I'm going to mirror them. Okay, there is my piece of fabric interfaced. Now I'm just going to cut my pocket piece. I interfaced a larger area just in case the fabric shrinks. Okay, so here is one of my patch pockets. Beautiful, cut on the bias. It's going to make a really cool contrast against my cape that is going to have the stripes going normal. And because I interface this with the interfacing on the straight of grain, it's basically really stable now in every way. It's not going to act like a bias cut piece. It's not going to deform over time. So that's what I'm going to do to get the bias cut look without it behaving like a bias cut piece. This is the wrong side of my fabric. That's where I'm going to interface the other side. So I've placed the pocket that I've already cut here. Wrong sides together, only that this is not interfaced yet. But I want to position my stripes in the same place, my checks. That's how it's going to be. You can see this one's hidden now. It's camouflaged because these are right on top of each other. Get my interfacing and position it over it. It's a slightly larger. Okay, so I know that's where it's going to be. And now I'm just going to slide this one away. And that's how I'm going to interface that. And then I'm going to put that on top and then trim it out. Okay, so there's my piece interfaced. I've got wrong sides together over here so that the pockets turn out mirrored. And I've put it right on top and all these checks match exactly. And this is how I'm going to cut the second piece now, and they're both going to have the same design and they're going to be symmetrical. A lot of trouble just to get something that looks different. This is only for aesthetic purposes. But I mean, that's the whole point of making clothes. Some of our decisions are based on how things are going to look. It's not something functional, because this would have been easy to cut on the straight of grain and then I wouldn't have interfaced the whole thing. These are the pattern pieces for the Koersel cape. I was very careful with manipulating and cutting them, and I cut them all in a single layer. I made sure to match up the checks on the sides over there. This is the back. It's cut on the fold. That's the neckline over there. And you can see the shoulder is super wide. It's going to be like a drop shoulder style. And then this is the sleeve area, and then this is the side seam. There's going to be a seam later on that closes that area. That's the front. Can't see it all. Let me scoot it up a little bit. You can see it's got rounded edges all the way around. Over here we have the hood piece. That's the neckline area, and that's the back of the hood. This is the entrance where you're going to have your face. And over there I have patch pockets. That is the actual patch pocket. I decided to interface the whole thing and I cut it on the bias just so that it looks pretty against the checks. And that is the pocket lining right there. For this pattern, you only use bias tape to finish the edges of the patch pocket, and that's it. All the rest is serged. All these edges would be serged and folded in. But I have decided to use bias tape for the whole thing. I made bias tape that ends up being 1 inch wide. And then when you fold it together, it's 1/2 inch bias tape. I used rayon linen, a very lightweight drapey fabric. I used spray starch to give it a bit more structure so it's easier to work with. And I made a lot. And I'm going to be using that to bind all of the edges, even to finish the shoulder seams. This is the back neckline. The fabric is quite delicate. This could definitely stretch out and affect the way the hood fits later. So you can't see it because the thread blends into the fabric almost. But I have done some stay stitching from here into the center, from here into the center. And I'm going to do the same with the front neckline, from the shoulders into the center. Here is one of the shoulder areas, and I'm going to bind these and then press the seam open. Now, I don't do that binding in 2 steps where you would sew it into the crease, flip it, and then sew again. I think that's a waste of time, but it is a traditional way of sewing it. So let me just show you. You can see all the folds of the bias tape. I'll just choose one of these creases and align it against the raw edge. Pretend the pins are sewing right there. So once I've sewn all of the shoulder area with my bias tape, I would then flip this, wrap around the raw edge. There is a folded edge on that side, and then I would sew again. If you want to do that and do extra seams, that is all fine by me. I'm just not doing that. I'm just going to fold it right now. So I'm just going to fold it and I'm just going to wrap it around in one go like this. And I'm just going to be doing one seam. And I think it's perfectly acceptable. I've sewn so many garments this way, and it's just less thread with the same effect. It looks the same. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I think it turns out neat. I've caught the bias tape on both sides and the raw edges are neatly wrapped. So I'm going to go ahead and do all the shoulder areas and then sew the shoulder seam. I've got the pieces right sides together. Here are the front pieces over here and I've got the back here on the table. I've aligned them at the shoulder seams. All that area has been bound and now I'm just going to sew, press those seams open, and then I'm going to construct the hood. This is the hood. Instead of binding each edge separately and then doing the seam like with the shoulders, I just bound both edges together. You know, this is curved. It's not like a seam I can press open. So I basically wrapped my bias tape around this curve, got it hand basted, and I'm going to go ahead and sew it. And this is going to finish the edge and do the seam at the same time. So that's basically how it's going to go. You can see I matched up the checks here so that when I wear it, you know, all these lines are going to match up. Okay, after sewing those shoulder seams, I got my hood over here and placed it right sides together with a neckline. This is the center seam of the hood that I bound, and with the binding I did the actual seam, so it was like a 2-in-1 step. I got the edge of the hood and made it at the center front here. This is the neckline. Everything was stay stitched before. There are the shoulder seams. Everything matches up 1-to-1. And I'm going to finish this in the exact same way I finished this area of the hood. I'm going to wrap the binding around there, sew it, and that's going to sew and finish the edges because I'm going to have all the layers together in this area. Here is my cape so far. I've taken a very long time to hand baste the binding all the way around. There is a place where I do have a join of the bias tape, but otherwise it was one continuous process all around the front here, along the hood, down there, then down the back. It's everywhere. You can see it's open. Here are the patch pockets, gorgeous. I can't get over how pretty this looks like on the bias. Remember, I interfaced the whole thing. Now we have these lining pieces. My lining pieces are actually the same on the right and the wrong side, so I don't really mind. What I'm going to do is take this lining piece and align it on the straight edge here on the top, and this is where we're going to sew it, and this is right sides together over here. I'm going to sew this with the lining on the bottom and the interface pocket on the top. The interface pocket is the most stable layer, so that's the one I want touching my presser foot. Okay, there is the pocket lining sewn on the top like that. So what we need to do now is bring this lining down. You can see that the lining is shorter than the pocket, but when you align this at the bottom, we're going to have this upper edge fold over and then the rest of it is lining. And this is going to be the final size of the pocket. We need to give this a good press. We need to baste around all the edges so that this just becomes one piece. And then we need to bind from here up to there. Okay, here is my binding wrapping around this pocket. It looks super neat from the inside, super nice when you put your hand in. You can't see the interfaced area. And now on the top, I just left a little bit loose, about 1 inch extra. And all I'm going to do now is fold this in like this. And I'm going to finish these raw edges by hand and just tuck this down. It'll be invisible from the outside. No one is going to see this because this is going to be sewn onto the cape, so it'll look super neat like that. And I've done this hand basting, and in this case I don't really think it's optional because we're going to do the final stitch when we sew this onto the cape. So I'm going to take this after hand tacking and finishing this little bit. I'm going to take this, put it on the cape, and then I'm going to do the final stitch around this area that's going to catch the binding and attach the pocket to the cape in one go. I marked at the very beginning my pocket reference with a yellow thread. I can see it really clearly, although I don't think the camera is going to pick it up nicely. I tried with a chalk. There was actually no way I could mark this fabric nicely other than marking it with thread. I'm actually sure you're not going to see this, but I have my yellow thread going across there, stops there, and then it starts going down here. So now I can just take my pocket, find my reference perfectly right there, and place it where it has to go. Now this is going to be symmetrical on both sides. Now you can see that these checks match, everything matches, and these marks are symmetrical. And then I'm going to do the definite stitch right into that binding, catching the pocket layer and the cape layer. After sewing on the pockets, the last step is a little partial side seam. It's not a real side seam, it's just sewing the layers together with the fabric wrong sides together. So it's just holding the side seams down up to a certain point, and upwards we're going to have the sleeve opening. Very easy, it's marked on the pattern. The fact that I've got checks and lines here makes it really easy for me to mark it just with pins and then just follow the lines. So that's on both sides, and then the cape is done. I'm over the moon about how this turned out. I'm just a little upset. I'm in the middle of summer right now. I'm gonna have to wait to be able to wear it out, but it's something to look forward to. I'm usually sewing in opposite seasons of the patterns being released. For everyone that lives in the Northern Hemisphere, you're very close to winter. I'm in summer right now. So this is lovely. Lovely to share the project with you, but I'm not gonna be able to wear it for quite a while. Highly recommend. I think it would be a great gift for someone special if you want to do something like this. I'm very selective of the projects I take on and who they're for. It's usually someone very, very close to me, like my mum. So I'm sure she would like one of these. Remember to check out the Koersel cape. It's on sale 20% off through next Wednesday, the 11th of December. All the links in the description box in the comments section. I think this is super versatile. I'm super happy with it. Love all the styling options. There's so many more. As usual, I'm one happy person that sews today because this is one of my favorite projects of the year. I'm not kidding you. Yeah, that's all from me. I'll see you again very soon with more sewing on this channel. Bye and happy sewing.